All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank y'all for joining us. We are really glad to be able to do this kind of final report out of the branding technical visit that is provided to you all from Wisconsin Main Street. Those of you well, I've met everybody, obviously, but that the three of us have been here since yesterday. Everything that you are seeing today literally has been created in the past 24 hours. So it's a bit of a kind of freakish fire hose kind of experience, but we've got a ton to share with you all, and hopefully you'll like what you see. So let's just jump right in. I always like to do a little bit of background research and data and kind of learn about the community before I make any recommendations. Super simple stuff. Do some base level demographics. Make sure that I know what's going on. I use a website called datausa.io. If you haven't ever been there, it's a fantastic website. One of the things that it does is it creates these visualizations that help you to understand the job breakdowns. So this is breakdown by industry. So you can see about 38% of the jobs that exist in Mayville are manufacturing jobs. So it's all graphic, and the size of the box is the percentage of the job. So about 7% retail trade. So you can kind of see how that breaks down. This would be considered a manufacturing heavy community. And we heard that echoed yesterday, where it wasn't just that it was manufacturing heavy, but it was a lack of even an industry diversity within that manufacturing that sometimes made it feel a little scary that you had maybe too many eggs in one basket. But I like to look at these because these either confirm or contradict the things that we hear from you all. This second one kind of breaks it down into, it's less about the industry itself, and it's more of a graphic distribution of the job types. So again, it just helps you kind of know what kind of workers do we have in our community, and what kind of things might help us to better connect with some of those. So again, that's that kind of base level understanding. The next thing that I like to go to is the census website, where I look at, it's called Census on the Map. And one of the first things that it does is it shows us inflow, outflow. So this shows us every single day. We have 2,172 people who come into Mayville to go to work. And we have 1,484 that leave the city to go to work. So you are a job importer. You bring in more employees than you export out of the area. Now, and you have 493 that live and work right here. So not a huge number, actually. That's city limits, about 500 that live and work right in town. Now, this next slide is pretty interesting. These are radar charts that actually analyze where the jobs, okay, so this first one this is the geographies where the employees come from. So you can kind of see they are mostly coming from the northwest kind of sector. You have your largest are actually traveling south, so traveling from Fond du Lac down to you. And then the next largest are actually coming from the southwest, and they're not coming very far. So the darker the number, the closer they are. The darker the color, the closer they are. The lighter the color, the farther they're coming from. And then you look at this next chart. This shows where the residents of Mayville go to work. So it's interesting, dramatically different geometric shapes. The travel patterns are different. So what does this mean? You've got a super long, super light southeast. That means you've got commuters going to Milwaukee.
Or Hartford, or
right,
Hartford,
right.
Jackson,
They're hitting. That yellow section is 50 miles or greater.
Yep.
So I don't think that's necessarily surprising to any of you, but it is nice to be able to have the data to truly back up the hunch. You know what I mean? So what that does is it helps us to really kind of formalize a two-part strategy when we talk about our downtown. Okay, we've got 2,600 people coming into the market every day to work. Are we capturing them at lunch? Are we capturing those dollars? or are they simply earning here and taking those dollars elsewhere? And then with the out commuters, what are those out commuter patterns? Is there any way for us to realize the economic impact on the person who does not work here during the day? If every business is closed at 5 p.m. and they've got a 40-mile commute, can you realize the economic impact? So now all of a sudden, we got ourselves a quandary. If the workers that are here aren't shopping our businesses and the out commuters can't shop our businesses because they're gone during the day, that's where our markets aren't supporting our business models. So all of these things just help us to make really, really intelligent decisions. From this might help to inform strategic events, retail promotions that happen at a certain hour. One of the biggest trends pre-COVID, as we were leading into COVID, was after bedtime retail promotions. So I think we always talk about extended hours, where it was like, okay, well, you might stay open until 5:30 or 6, and we beg you to stay open until 7. We still have families, you still have kids, you still have stuff to do. So businesses are closing at normal time. People are going home and taking care of all the stuff at home, putting the kids to bed, and then the businesses reopen from 8 to 10. We have seen attendance and just the overall kind of the special experience. Dollars are through the roof, participation's through the roof, the willingness to kind of be a part of that. And so being really strategic based off what you understand. Does that make sense to everybody? So then from there, I like to always show you the community back through our lens. And these were just some of the photos that we took during the day yesterday. Being able to see everything that was going on over the Audubon is fantastic. You got stunning architecture. Your community just kind of oozes a certain, it feels like a warm architectural hug, when you come into the community. There's this great character. And I will say this, there is the buildings read very, very well from the street. You don't drive through town and feel like it's a town that's not cared for. Even with as many buildings as we know need facade work and that kind of stuff, it doesn't read as decrepit. But one of the things that it also doesn't read as is full of business, and I'm not sure why. It takes an extra level of effort to figure out how many businesses you have. So it was not until I physically got on the sidewalk and walked the entire street that I understood what you had to offer. Part of it is because there's a lot of flat window graphics, a lot of vinyl graphics as the store signage, and that's it. So sometimes that can be kind of hard. You in Mayville, you love getting your hair done. So you can
pizza. Can you believe that?
I cannot. I've never seen a place that you have truly broken the salon pizza parlor coefficient, and it's so. But they're just these really great they're great little signs of character all throughout the community. I mean, little stores, little character in the way that you run business. I'm so excited about the projects that we learned about yesterday and the businesses coming online. And I think all of those are reinforcing the same thing. So, just kind of driving through that. I mean, it is a truly, truly stunning community. You've got this fountain. The fountain at one time was the community logo. This is the way this is how it happens. You go through a streetscape project. The members of the community raise money, put a fountain in the 80s. Then you put up wayfinding signage. And, hey, let's put the fountain on it because we paid a lot of money for that. And that's the way it goes.
The fountain was original to the town, though. That wasn't, because that sat out in front of...
It was a horse watering trough.
Yeah, that sat out in front of the music block building.
Not this one.
Oh,
so
okay.
This one, no, you're right. This one is from 1986 and was a reproduction.
Gotcha.
So that was the thing that inspired, why they put the fountain in. So, and you kind of find those little stories. I mean, that's the stuff that is kind of cool. you got some really interesting. It just, I mean, all in all, you're doing so much really, really well. So I think that that's good. As I walked around, there wasn't anything that was like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure how they're going to figure this out. I am shocked that pizza is hard to find here. That
I think that'll be fixed soon enough.
Right.
Like, I feel like that's
that is odd. That is odd. I mean, when you have, yeah, that's odd. But other than that, literally, that was the only thing that left me kind of scratching my head a little, because typically what you have is you have a community that every restaurant is a pizza parlor, and they literally cannot convince somebody to open something that doesn't sell pizza.
Right.
So it was odd to not really be able to find any that really said we're a pizza place. And so that was, but again, that doesn't worry me too much.
No.
So then from there, I like to analyze the existing tools. I like to look at everything from where you have invested already. I mentioned these yesterday. These are the pre-existing wayfinding signs. Hopefully I'm not going to hurt anybody's feelings. These signs they're underscaled for what they are, and they don't actually, they do not adhere to the federal standards. Now, they were created long before the federal standards were, so it's not like you did anything wrong, but when they get to the end of their life, and all signs do that, typically that's a 10-year time period. These are probably older than that. I'm not telling you to take them down. I'm just saying when you have that opportunity to refresh, you're going to have a different scale sign that goes in, and I'll show those in a little bit. So then from there, obviously our main charge is Main Street organization. This is literally the textbook solution to a Main Street logo. Let's slap a thing that looks like a street sign with a lamppost and a streetscape. Like you, bam, 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 3 parts, nailed it and done. The problem is, and this is not a problem of you all, it's a problem of Main Street. Like, you're more dynamic than that. And this doesn't effectively communicate what the organization does, and it also doesn't really effectively communicate the character of the community. You tried to create a Swiss Army knife, and instead it's just kind of it's a dull spoon, and that's fine. I mean, that's the reason I've been doing this for 20 years, because people, this is what they do. So, that wasn't like mean. Like, you get what I'm saying. Like, you designed it exactly the way that most people would design it. It just so happens that your gut instinct is a little off. So we're gonna.
No one here designed it.
Yeah,
so you
yeah.
can't offend
We're gonna see if we can fix that. So then that takes us to these, and these very much serve as the foundation of the system. So if you're not familiar, 2018. The city adopted the new logo. It was done by a design contest. Article I read was somewhere between 60 and 70 different entries that were put into it. The designer was local. One of the things that I often do is, I mean, you can imagine when you go into a community as a designer, there are a lot of really, really bad logos out there. This is not one. This is a good logo, has really, really solid bones. But when you have somebody who designs a logo for a logo contest, they're not always thinking about how do we create a brand system for a community. They're trying to design a logo. One of the beautiful things is, because the designer is local and the city re-engaged the designer to update the police badge, there was a second study done by the same mind of how can we take these components and have what we need. So I want to just show you the way that I kind of approach this. So when we look at your first logo, it has geese, the sunrise, sunset, horizon, all the energy of the new day, blah, blah, blah. It has your word type with your name. It has your state modifier. It has trees, reference to nature. It has bridge, which is our bridge down there close to the Park Pavilion. It has the Rock River. It has cattails and the reference to your proximity to the marsh. And it has your established date. That is a lot of content to have in a pretty succinct place, right?
And still look clean.
And still look good, right?
It really
Exactly,
does, yeah.
exactly. So, and just between you all, the only part of this, there are 2 parts of this that kind of strike me as being a little, I don't think I'd do it quite like that. One I'm going to hit in a second. The second is the typeface on Wisconsin. It's fine. I have no problem with it not being super legible. That's not supposed to be super legible all the time. It is the only component of this logo that might potentially target the date in which it was created. It's sometimes when you make certain decisions, it can be these kind of indicators of, oh, I bet that was done in 2018. You know, that's just the way things go. It's not a big deal at all. And in fact, I think that the designer actually checked herself on that when she went back and had to do the police badge. Because in the police badge, she lost the geese, she lost the cattail, and lost the established date. She realized that you can't use that scripty Wisconsin over and over again. So she went back to the primary typeface for Wisconsin, and she added the Park Pavilion, the Town Clock, and the Beaumont Hotel and buildings. Okay, so between the two of these, she's building this system, and that is the system we're going to build from, because it makes no sense to start from scratch. So we're going to build up this brand toolkit. Well, with the brand toolkit, we're going to start with colors. You might think, oh, well, how do we start with colors? The school, Cardinals, we start with red. Well, no, you've already done the color thing. We're going to combine the color palettes of the city logo and the police badge, and it is going to give us a 6-color palette: a blue, red, green, gold, black, and gray. And that gives us those natural colors. And the thing that was so amazing about this was when you take these colors and you overlay them on photos of your community, they feel right. They fit in. They're not colors that are intended to jump out. They're colors that are derived from the place, which is exactly what you should do. So again, not creating new, we're just reinforcing the components that you have. Then from there, defining those typefaces. And it was funny, I was sitting there and I was like, I know I've seen that typeface before. I know I've seen that typeface before. And then finally my head was like, I think that typeface is called the bartender. And like I looked at the bartender, and the bartender looked kind of close, but it was like, it's not the bartender. And this is how my mind works, I guess. I could not figure out what it was. And then finally Sarah emailed me, and the typeface is called gin. Well, guess what? The bartender serves gin if he's a good bartender. So I was real close. So the primary typeface is called gin. I added in a sans serif secondary typeface called Connect. Sans serif typefaces, the technical term I learned in school is they don't have doohickeys. The serifs are the little points on the ends of the letters. Sans serif are actually designed to be content neutral. They're designed to not have character on purpose, so that they can effectively communicate without jading communication with personality. So they're really, really good secondary typefaces in your system. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, a lot of times, if all you have is that sans serif, your stuff might feel a little bit sterile. But when you have this ability to have this gin as your primary and then couple it with this sans serif, it feels very sophisticated, it feels very, very balanced, and it feels like a nice compliment. Now, this next thing is the only other criticism that I have of the city logo. And it all has to do with your name. So what Jennifer decided to do when she designed it, and again, you see, she changed her tactics with the police badge. When you decide to go through and scale up your first and last letter, you start to amplify some of the variations in the widths of the letters, but you also make the letters thicker. So the M and the E are thicker than all the other letters. But one of the biggest things that happens is Mayville has a V, and that V should be in the geometric center of the word type. It is not currently in the center. But what you will find is people, they don't know why it doesn't feel right, but it makes them uneasy. So what I did was I took that same typeface, I simply allowed all the letters to be the same size, and I've created 3 different variations, an upper arch, a lower arch, and an all caps that have perfectly centered V's. Then that way, when you couple graphics on top of them, whatever graphic is going to nest in that negative space of that V, like it's one of those things where nobody's ever going to be able to tell you why it doesn't feel just a degree off, but that's why. So now you're able to have that perfectly centered word type. Does that make sense? So with all of that stuff, that lands us on this destination brand, okay? And the destination brand is your word type, it's your colors, it's your graphics that we've already laid the foundation for, and it's that kind of reintroduction of a series of messages. And the primary that I'm going to go with, just because it's everywhere, is Gateway to the Marsh. Like that doesn't have to be the only thing you say, but that is a moniker that you will always own. I think a lot of times with taglines, communities treat taglines like tattoos. Like we're going to come up with something and we're going to put it on our skin and we're going to have to live with it the rest of our lives. Don't treat it like that. Treat taglines like outfits, having the right message to say at the right time in the right conversation. So when that all comes together, this is kind of what that could look like, kind of focusing in on some of that more urban structure, playing off of the hexagon version of the city itself. You might have a version that looks a little bit more like this. Being able to go and kind of zoom out a little, having a slightly cleaner version, bringing in just that cupola off the Beaumont Hotel, bringing in that marsh grass. So again, you're starting to see, you create a system. It's not about having a logo. It's about building off of that foundation of what you have to be able to tell the right story at the right time. And then also being able to have clean versions of this that can scale down small and that can work no matter how we're kind of shooting for it. And so I created these different variations where you've got the historic with Wisconsin, the historic with the tagline, having the right thing for the right time. These are all super simple, but guess what? Like, this is the kind of stuff you can actually embroider on a shirt. This is the kind of stuff you could screen print onto a cup or something like that. But what's nice about it is the options become endless because the components are consistent. What do you need for the application? And they all start to feel connected because you're pulling from the same set of graphics. Does that make sense? So then from there, we start to dig into the organization brand. We've got a couple different organizations. I didn't really ask permission. I just kind of did. The only thing I would say on the city side is that the city might adopt a second variation that simply denotes that it's the city of. There are times where it needs to have kind of more of a municipal approach to it. I absolutely know when the city did the logo contest, in their minds, they wanted something that they wanted it to be both a representation of the government and also a way to market the community. That's fair enough, but elected officials do things that tick people off. So, being able to have that opportunity to maybe keep the baskets a little bit separate. And I think that my hope is, with everything being so, derived off of the system that was created, I think it feels like it complements. So then from Main Street, one of the big things, I'm going to show the logo that I did with the clock, because the clock makes sense even though it's not up right this second. If the clock's not the thing, the great thing is, in this community, you have so many different vertical elements that it's kind of like pick your silhouette or have evolving silhouettes. But if you remember back to yesterday, one of the big things I always like in my Main Street logos is I like a logo that brings in 4 different colors, kind of tying off of the 4-point approach. I like a logo that's a little simpler, a little bit more succinct, and just allows it to be a little bit more visually representative of connecting a dot than it is trying to tell the story of the downtown. So with this, I put together a couple different versions of this, just kind of bringing in, reinforcing that kind of hexagon of the city itself, bringing in the 4 colors and quadrants, having that simple silhouetted, clock face. I've got a couple other things I played with. So the cupola works in that space. I did a cupola for Limestone School. That works, so all those different things. If you're scared about the clock not going up and instead you want the acorn lamp post head from your lights, you can have that as well. It's a very, very simple and adaptable tool, but it gives you that opportunity for your colors to represent that committee approach. It gives you that opportunity to kind of scale it down and have a horizontal version, have a stacked version, have a simplified version for social media. And then looking at how that might make its way into some of these components. This is what a business card might look like. I actually really, really like to create board member business cards, but not printing the board member's name on everything. I actually do a blank where you handwrite it and to kind of give that personal touch. But the 3 cards along the bottom are something that I've started doing a lot lately. I call them impact cards. And what they are is you just print a big stack of these and you hand them out to all your board members. And every single time they shop at a downtown business, they go in and use services down there, they just leave these cards behind. And, it's this kind of personalized way where you write that name and you leave that visual impact. We are supporting you every day. Because one of the biggest things that happen in Main Street is, well, I don't ever see them. They don't do anything for me. And for $100, you can buy enough business cards to give all of your board members a big stack and start reminding people. It's the same tactic that police officers use when they go through and they're doing patrols and they leave a card every time a business is closed to let the owner know that they stopped by. So think about those ways that you can kind of amplify the awareness of your support and your presence in the community. From that, we jump over to the Chamber of Commerce. You've got a couple interesting dynamics because Main Street shares the office with them, and because you share staff. We want to make sure that we have something that kind of connects, but also maintains a little bit of difference there. The chamber recently went through a logo contest, and a local high school student designed the heron circle on the bottom. So we've got some new graphics that are kind of going out with that. Now, anytime you have a logo contest, I always tell organizations it is completely and totally within your right to run that through a professional design filter. So what is the concept that this student was trying to convey? The marsh, the bird, and the water in a circle. So what I did was I created a stylized version of that, trying to honor the art that was done. I actually created a custom blue heron that has in the abstract, it has a stylized M to connect it back to Mayville. And so it looks like this. So again, I don't think anybody would look at that and say that they were not derived from one another. From an organizational standpoint, you might have to sit on it for 6 months so you don't hurt anybody's feelings. Last thing you want anybody to do is say, the chamber hurt my high school seniors, my student did that. Look, I got 5 kids. I know how it works. It's okay. Hurt their feelings. You're in this for helping business. So, but again, this just gives you that opportunity to kind of connect the dots. I will say this. The chamber logo has there are 2 concepts that come together in the current chamber logo. First of all, there's a thing I call chamber diplomacy. Chambers like to make their names longer so that they seem relevant to more people. So before you know it, it might be the greater Mayville Regional Area Chamber. Yes, like, hey, let's keep making it longer so we can get more members and let people know we don't just focus on relevancy. Comes from relevancy, not from your name. So, I know that your Mayville area, that's fine. You don't have to keep adding that stuff. But, the current logo has MACC and Mayville Area Chamber of Commerce all in the same logo. If you have to explain what the acronym is in the same place, then the acronym's not giving you the benefit an acronym gives you. So being able to have a version that says MACC, being able to have a full version, and then being able to just have one that says the chamber. That's what everybody calls it. You know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't matter what the formal name is. It embrace the way people refer to you. So that's why you see those different versions as part of it. So then the next one that it didn't ask permission for is the library. Library looks to me like they got a new logo recently. Is that
Well, that's for the campaign.
Oh, that's for the campaign?
And we've been just the last logo was the building, the old building, which we're trying to get a new building, so
Right.
that, does it make sense to have the old building?
I will say, I didn't know, I figured that that's kind of what, but since the tagline, building our next chapter, I knew that that would be connected to that push. I think the icon is very interesting. So essentially what I'm showing here is adopting the icon and tying it into the word typeset. So what this could be is after your capital campaign is done, you could kind of morph this into the representation of the library. And then instead of building our next chapter, you can evolve that to writing our next chapter together or whatever, I think that there's some good stuff there. So again, this shows the simple way of thinking about colors and thinking about typeface. It doesn't force everybody to look completely different, but they can start to look like they're coming from the same stage. So then from there, we get to what we call brand extension, and this is where it gets fun. So we focused in on some of the Main Street events, trick or treat, going through and tying all that stuff in together, being able to have those events. And guess what? It's a Halloween event. I know that orange isn't in your color palette. You're allowed to use orange, right? So it's kind of like you got to know the rules before you break the rules. Sizzling summer shindig. And again, I'll be honest, I kind of went full tilt on the clock because I feel like you need the clock back, especially if you're talking about doing this Allen Street project. You are creating this plaza. Now, the clock might end up jumping across the street into the middle of the plaza, but you need it back. You can't have somebody drive over it and just not put it back. That's uncool.
It'll go back.
It'll go back. It'll go
I
back.
promise.
But just showing that kind of style and being able to kind of create that look and feel. Concerts in the park, again, one of the interesting things about Foster Park being, set right next to Limestone School, the cupola on that school is crazy. And if you remember how the building was built, it was built originally as the first section, and it had a square cupola in the middle of the first section. And then they added on a second section that was almost the same width as the first and built a whole new cupola because they had to move it over to what would have been the edge of the building. And that's when this 45-foot tall cupola got added to the building, was during that second edition. And so it's a very, very interesting shape and size. Being able to kind of tie that in. And again, we keep talking about the clock. The clock is important because you have this Allen Street Park thing that you're talking about. Allen Street Park is the first opportunity for your community to actually have a civic-oriented gathering space. If you look at the way that Mayville operates now, you are flanked by parks on either edge of your linear downtown. And you have this ribbon of river all along your downtown. But there is no place where the community can gather surrounded by the commerce of the district. And that's an important component, that town square component of a place. So I'm going to challenge you as that project, really takes hold. The name matters. You need to give the community a true gift. And I don't care what you name it as long as it's not Allen Street Park. I understand that park, having park in the name is important because it opens it up for policy, kind of streamlining policy and use on the way the space works. I would call it Mayville Park Square, which I feel like calls it a park. I think about it though. I think strategically what you need it to do from kind of an ordinance and use standpoint. The last thing you want to do is call it a plaza and now people can't drink in it. when you call it a park, it opens it up for certain use, certain standards, certain like.
People drinking it whether they're supposed to or not. Just want to say that.
Right. But I say all that to say naming that amenity is really, really important. So you deserve to be able to own it.
What if they called it the Rock River Park or something?
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. And I
Because
think
there's nothing about the river in there. And to me, the marsh is our neighbor. The river is us.
So here's the thing, though. Here's the thing.
Here's the thing.
There's an interesting little dynamic there.
I-
Because every time you are a community that, as of right now, the river is at your back. Like
Okay.
you are not engaging the river. You've turned your back to the river, and your attention is the other way.
What about the pavilion?
Well, so the pavilion is kind of a self-contained, like it's disconnected from the downtown space.
Commerce, you're talking.
Yeah. And I kept asking that, like I kept running that through my head in terms
Okay.
of river imagery from a logo standpoint. I love calling it Rock River Park or whatever. Like I love having that connected in. But I will say this. I think that there is something really, really important about the simplicity of integrating in some of the marsh reference, because marsh reference also references water. It implies water. And marsh and river is an interesting combination, but it is hard to convey a river with the way that you had the system in place, because everything is stacked, which means you're always dropping this graphic on the bottom. Like this fluid river graphic on the bottom that can be hard to deal with.
Marsh is vertical.
It can be flat too.
River's horizontal.
Like you can drop a marsh on a hard straight edge, and you can tell that it's marsh and don't need to complete it in your mind. Where with a river image, with this sweeping river image, that's one of the reasons why Jennifer had to take it into a hexagon, because she needed this space for it to meander into.
But having it somewhere in a name.
Absolutely would make all the sense in the world, because then what would happen is, I cannot imagine that there would not be a long-term plan that would have some sort of Rock River walk, I mean, like it, and having that kind of connection through and all that kind of stuff. So you're exactly right. Like figuring out that way to connect it and bring,
even if it's a 10-year plan or something that's like,
well,
hey,
simply
in 15 years we're gonna land here.
Simply by naming it, you're bringing the river on the other side of the buildings. Now I will say this, like, guess what? If you're going to have a park that's going to be called Rock River, what are the two components that are going to need to be in the park space? Rocks and water, like in some form or fashion. And there's some really interesting things you can do with that. There's actually, my wife is studying landscape architecture, and she designed this park, and the purpose of the park was to collect stormwater runoff, but there's a tremendous amount of time where it's not doing that function. It's just a park. And she actually replicated the pathway of the Brandywine River in a small scale through this park. So it became this and then my 6-year-old was sitting there watching her draw this, and I love this. This is like one of my favorite stories. Ella was like, "Mommy, you know what you should do? You should make a puddle park." And think of how much money communities have spent on splash pads when you could simply take a ground and put some intended divots, and every time it rains, you now have a water feature.
I had somebody who yesterday posted on their Facebook page a picture of their new rain boots that they bought. This was an adult. Went walking, couldn't find any puddles.
Yeah.
I'm not
props
kidding.
to our street department.
Serious props to
I
him.
could give
Absolutely.
them some direction on where to find those puddles.
Yeah, they lived in another state, but I'm just saying.
Right.
Even I have adult friends who love go out barefooted and find all the, because it's Minnesota, right? Like it wrecks every road that you can ever build. Yeah.
Yep. So again, I think I love that. I love that. In fact, I'm going to design one that says that and throw that in there too. I think any of those things, and again, some of this stuff is food for thought. So it'll foster conversation in 3 months if we say, hey, we've kicked the project off and the community's starting to lean towards this. Can you design a logo that says this? Just hit me up and we'll do it. That's how this works. You got to once you have the system in place, it becomes so easy to do it that it doesn't make sense to not connect the dots. I know this just went to print, so I just pulled kind of the your community guide cover and just showed
That's
simply
the old one.
yeah, that's the old one, simply integrating the logos in there. Big fan of merchandise, being able to have merchandise that people would want to wear, being able to create things that people want to buy. Most of the shirts that we have that are community oriented are either local high school or they're car wash shirts. They have like 7,000 logos on the back and they're so ugly you only cut grass or paint in them. So being able to give people things that they want to buy and want to carry around and want to use. Based off of some of the cool things that y'all are doing with your gateway, with the 7-foot metal rusted letters, I wanted to go through and show you what a enhanced wayfinding system might look like, and play off of that iron connection. Being able to use metal cutout, being able to use this kind of difference in texture between colored powder coated and uncoated patina. All of those things I think read very, very well. Just because your high school colors are red doesn't mean that your sign colors need to be red. Red is a very, very difficult pigment in the public space, A, to stick out, and B, for the color to last. It fades brown quickly. So
red can make people angry.
well, it can make people angry, and in the world of the DOT, red signs typically are emergency communications. So you don't want to, like, the worst thing you would do is go and say, we want red signs, we're going to make Trailblazer signs, and then the vendor says, well, you have to use the 3M reflective material, and that is like a bright fire engine emergency red. So you're safer with black, and black really reads well. These signs have to be fully reflective, and they make a black fully reflective material. So what you're seeing here, you're seeing a couple different gateways, a larger gateway, a smaller kind of district gateway. You're seeing Trailblazer signs. They kind of set the tone, but these are also super, super expensive. So you might find that there's some inexpensive stuff you want to do immediately, and we call those guerrilla wayfinding. And these are much more conversational. These can be printed on corrugated plastic.
I love that.
2-minute walk in any direction to get your hair did. Like these they like literally don't have to be.
You don't need an arrow.
From anywhere.
No,
You
exactly.
can put 100 on
It's
them.
like all
You need the.
you do like the arrow in every direction.
That's right.
But like literally, these are printed on plastic corrugated. You can wire tie them to a post and just put them up, and they're always in minute time. They're in like biking and walking minute time. They're a really, really great kind of sign, because these are the kind of things that help to foster connectivity in the visitor in a time period where you might not have that retail density that's drawing people all the way down the street. So super cool. And for literally the cost of 2 street banners, you could do probably 15 of these and get them up all throughout the community, and people start talking about them. Speaking of banners, we thank you all for your help yesterday. We were able to find the dimensions, and I'm a big fan in the world of banners I lean simple in the designs. I like single color Sunbrella canvas banners with white ink. Those last the longest. And the biggest mistake that most designers make when they're tasked with designing street banners is they start with a white computer screen. So what they end up doing is they end up over designing the banner for the space that it's going. And then the banners create extra clutter instead of rhythm and cleanliness. One of the great things about a banner system is a banner system can help you understand how your streets work. They can help you understand where your district is. They can help to motivate you to explore perpendicular nodes to a linear main street, all through the use of selective color. So I designed 3 designs on 3 different color backgrounds, just using those components. Again, very, very simple. One of the things that you could imagine is if you're going to do this kind of gesture around Allen Street needs all one color running down that street. And then with Main Street, I might have a single color running down the north side and the west side. It's west and east, isn't it? Yeah. I've been screwed up since we came in. I think I came from the west, but I actually came from the south. So, you might do one solid color down one side of the street, one solid color down the other side of the street. You might decide that you want a Main Street color and then other colors that go on all your perpendicular nodes to kind of draw people out. You might decide that anytime you have a park gets green banners. Or you might decide because parks are green, every time you have a parks get red banners. So think about it strategically and think about banners as a way to navigate you through a community. If you've got civic parking lots that nobody uses, you can use banner art shows. So these are the places where you're getting local artists or even elementary school kids to design art for banners. You're printing these on a 4-color type banner system. But I'll tell you what, you put up a kid's art on a banner in a parking lot and those parents are going to go see that parking lot. And before you know it, people are going to start parking in the parking lots instead of complaining about how there's no parking. So just think real strategically. Your street banners can be super, super important tools for you. And then that moves us on to brand implementation. I just want to share with you all some of the tools that you're going to get from this. We're going to start with the Brand Touch Manual. So we've put together this manual for you. In the manual, it describes the components of the brand. It describes some of the attributes and characteristics of the community. It kind of breaks down this logo system and the components that make it up, talks about the variations, talks about sizing and the different sizing variations, things that you need to do to kind of keep it, safe with spacing and stuff like that, giving yourself buffers around it. It defines all of the colors of that system so you can reproduce those colors consistently. It includes and defines what those typefaces are. So you'll be able to load those on your machines and go with it. Talks a little bit about sizing and scaling and font use. Describes those extension components, the collateral materials, goes through and it will have a comprehensive contact sheet of every single logo that I created so you can quick reference the file you're looking for. And then it moves us into the implementation component, which has a couple of interesting things as well. We start with a 3-phased implementation checklist. So literally everything that you would have to think about rolling it out. Now, this is not 3 phases this year. This is 3 phases over the next decade. Phase 1 is kind of the easiest to tackle. It's stuff that you should be able to do pretty quickly. Phase 2 is the stuff that's typically pretty cheap. And then phase 3 is the stuff that starts to cost dollars and you have to be strategic about how you plan it. But it's putting it all in one place and making it easy for you to digest. The second is how to be a brand partner. This is intended to share with businesses and organizers in the community, and it just gives them ideas of how they might be able to take advantage of the brand system. Then we have the brand score sheet. This is for your organization to score its own implementation and then kind of highlight those next steps for you to drive the next step of implementation and kind of the furthering of the system itself. So the points are kind of inversely related to how much it costs to do it. So, I think going out there and you can get as many points from putting up a gateway sign as you can from changing your Facebook profile. So, let's do the Facebook profile first. That should be kind of the quick win. And I'm giving you a couple other tools just from an organizational standpoint. So from a promotions standpoint, this is a strategic calendar for the year. It allows you to go through and mark the events that go on, allows you to classify those in one of the 3 categories that Main Street thinks about in promotional events: our image building events, our special events, and our retail promotions. And the sad thing is, a lot of times we consider everything a retail promotion. Trick or treat is a great example. We call it a retail promotion, and it is the absolute opposite of a retail promotion. If you've ever owned a business, the last thing that you want is 1,200 plastic masked children who run into your store for free candy while their parents stay out on the street drinking wine out of a hydro flask. So the thing that, you know, being able to know where the events fall onto the calendar, and then also it asks a little bit about some of the audiences of who they communicate to. And then the final piece is what we, it's kind of a communication audit. It just gives you an opportunity to think a little bit about, this is what we're using to communicate. This is how frequently we're communicating. And it just helps you to kind of think through. And I'm going to give all that to you as PDFs so you can dig into them and kind of spend a little bit of time with them. But like I say, we've been doing this for almost 20 years. And I think a lot of times we overcomplicate the issue of telling our story. And I think that these tools will simplify that down a little and help you to focus on the couple of things that you really need to do well. So that's what I was able to do since yesterday.
Wow.
So,
I was hoping for a little more. But
I know.
I
Well,
would still give you 9
had you brought another pie that was actually cooked all the way.
I know, right?